Introductions are really simple, so simple, in fact, that people shortcut them and skip them, and they end up giving a bad introduction to your paper. So when you're writing an introduction, I want you to focus on three parts. A simple sentence to hook the reader's attention, to engage them with the content of what you are going to say in your thesis, thinking through what a basic reader will need to know just to understand your paper, what definitions they might not be familiar with, what context they might need if they have not read the book or text you're referring to, and ending with your thesis statement. So the very first thing is to hook your reader's attention, and there are some simple ways you can do this. You've probably practiced this since about the 6th grade. So here are some simple ones on the left, and to the right there is an example. So for example, I might just ask a question that connects what I'm going to talk about in my thesis and my body paragraphs to the audience in some way. Like, if I'm talking about the Odyssey, would you leave a romantic partner for someone you found less attractive? That's the situation Odysseus finds himself in, and yet I ask it as kind of an engaging question. You might include an interesting anecdote, meaning a story, that is related to the text, but remember to keep it related pretty much to what you'll be talking about in your thesis and body paragraphs. So the Odyssey describes Odysseus as pining for his wife, but his actions show otherwise. If my thesis is talking about a conflict around Odysseus leaving Circe, that might be an appropriate anecdote. I might just state an opinion that I'm going to shoot down or challenge right away. Odysseus is a hero in popular culture. That's an opinion, but is he really heroic? Now, if I'm talking about the conflict around Odysseus leaving his wife, that might not be so on topic. It's talking about the Odyssey, but my topic is really about conflict and someone leaving someone else in a romantic relationship, not necessarily heroes. So I want to consider if the engaging thing I'm trying to do is on topic. Or finally, I might even just talk about why my topic is important by making a modern connection. The Odyssey is thousands of years old, and yet we still have infidelity and other issues in relationships. And that, of course, is what I'd be talking about. Here is the heart of your introduction. What does your audience need to know? So think about who your audience is. Clearly, it's your teacher, but it's probably informed readers. And what I want you to think about is your audience isn't necessarily an expert. They haven't necessarily read the Odyssey, or they might not know what version of the text that you have chosen you're talking about. So consider if you need to talk about the publisher, tell who the author or translator is, mention which version of the publication you're talking about. So for the Odyssey, you might mention you're reading the Robert Fagles translation. That's important because it's different from the other ones. If you're talking about a part of a book, you might want to summarize in the introduction because you definitely don't want to summarize in your body paragraph. So this is a good place for it. You might introduce any characters where it's necessary to introduce them. And another thing you often do, especially in higher level papers, is if you'll be talking about any jargon, any terms, you might want to define them up front in the introduction rather than having to define them when you're analyzing your quotes. So if an epithet is one thing I'll be talking about in my thesis statement, I may as well define it in the introduction. I don't have to, but it might be a good place to do it. If you're defining Odysseus as an epic hero, you might take some time now to define what that is. And then the very last thing, and I repeat, it really should be the last thing if you're writing a paper and you're submitting it in the United States of America, is the thesis statement. So in some countries, it's traditional to put the thesis statement in the beginning of the introduction or at the end of the introduction or at the end of the whole paper. But in the United States, your American readers are going to be looking for it as the last sentence of your introduction, not the second to last sentence, not somewhere in your introduction. So put it last. And just remember, it's a roadmap for your paper. You've got to answer the question fully, and it usually has the stem, the main answer, and it's got, for a 5-paragraph essay, often 3 branches. Those branches should lay out the order of your paragraph. So just make sure you stick with that order. as you proceed through your body paragraphs. That's it.